if humanity at that time had a sort of perception into the right brain, into the unconscious, into the subconscious, that means it could personify beings in other dimension and personify them and materialize them into our dimension, because our perception creates the material world. So if I can perceive other dimensions, I can materialize them. So the material world becomes much, much broader than what we have today.
Dr. Ibrahim Karim, welcome on Just Tap In, brother. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
Well, I'm excited about life itself. I mean, life itself is a miracle. And so, not life as we see it, but I'd rather say life as we don't see it, the multidimensional life. And living in complete multidimensionality is a very exciting thing. And that's where I dwell. That's where I feel happy.
And I've heard you say once that there is a superhuman waiting inside of us to emerge, and that throughout history, the mind has not always been trapped in this sensory perception of the five senses that we're behaving in now, but we lost this ability to perceive in hybrid perception and hybrid time. So going back to ancient Egypt, you're in Cairo right now. I'm in Colombia in South America. Where have these civilizations began in the sense of truly understanding them from a multidimensional perspective and through a hybrid perception instead of just a one-dimensional five-sensory realm?
Okay, we can start from there. So it's important to understand where did all those ancient civilizations come from? Because if you look at any ancient civilization, none of them seems to be a source. They're all legacies. Some people regard Atlantis as a source. It's not, it's a legacy. Some people look at Lemuria. Some people you can look at any of those civilizations. You will find that they are legacies because many things have just come out of nowhere in those civilizations. So there must be something much before that we are not aware of. And that's where we're going to go now together. What I will do with you now is I will start by looking at the perception of the way we have perception divided between sensory mode, what we call left brain perception. It's a mode, it's not localized in the left brain. And then there is the right brain mode of perception that is more beyond time and space and so on. So we want to go into those perceptions and find how they interacted through history, and were they the same in ancient humanity or were they different? And then we will take another aspect of modern science that we know, modern cognitive science, and that is how our sensory perception gets the sensory information. We take it into certain areas in the brain, and then there's a meaning level that works out meaningful three-dimensional pictures, and then we project it as our reality. So our reality, the world we live in, is a projected reality from our sensory perception. Now, if earlier in history people had a different sensory perception, if the focus of perception was not completely in the left side like we are, maybe it was partly on the right side, all that, their perception would be different. But if their perception was different, the world they project would be different. So we usually think, for example, if you come to Egypt, you think that the pharaohs, the ancient Egyptians, they walked on the same land you're walking now. No, they projected another world in which they lived. And we are projecting a world in which we live. So it's not the same world. So that is, we'll take that as our starting point. Now, we know that left brain perception is a sort of the sensory perception that creates our reality. It even creates time and space. Linear time and space is a sensory perceived time and space. You perceive it, and it has a certain linearity of time. So we create a world that has laws that relate to this linearity. For example, the laws of cause and effect. You need before and after to have a law of cause and effect. So while we live in this world, we try to explain everything through our linearity, through action and reaction, through cause and effect, through before and after. Well, it really is not like that. When we go to multidimensional things, you're into multidimensional time, it's a totally different thing. But we have to translate that into linear time, and then we add cause and effect to it, because it doesn't exist if you don't have a linear time. So we add cause and effect, and then we add personification based on our cultural content. We add all that. So our left brain perception creates this linear time and space. But let us see how much of us is really left brain perception. I mean, me, as you see me, Ibrahim, in front of you, this personified identity here, is the result of left brain personification. You're a result of left brain personification. Even the material world, the table in front of you, is material because of sensory perception, because the sense of touch in a certain frequency makes it material. But if my sense of touch shifts in frequency, I'd touch another material world and go through this one as if it didn't exist. So our sensory perception is making this reality for us. Now, is this the totality of what we are? Let's look at it in a different way. In order for our senses to work, for our identity to emerge, we need sensory perception. But you can't have sensory perception if your brain is not alive. That means blood has to flow to your brain, revive your brain for the senses to awaken, and then you create the world we're in. But for blood to do that, it means that there's a stage before our being. That's the life of our body. So the life of our body cannot be within our world. It cannot be part of linear perception. It cannot be part of our identity because it is there before our identity exists. It is there before time and space and its linearity exists. So what runs our body then if it's not this time and space that we know? Our body is run by multidimensional time and space. It is run by the universe. It's not run by anything in this world. I mean, your heartbeat, what makes it beat are the rhythms of the universe working through your body, making all the functions of your body work. Now, here is a place for a question. If the universe is making our biological functions work, and the universe is multidimensional, it's not linear, that means it's in a way eternal. So why don't we live forever? Our body functions are universal, and as universal functions, I should actually live forever. Here there's a little catch. When I gained my sensory awareness into linear time and space, and I became aware of my body functions, I pull them into resonance with linear time and space. And so I'm adding criteria to them that they don't have. I'm adding the criteria of before and after and things like that. So all of a sudden now, my organ functions follow linear time. They have been translated into linear time, and that's how I age and all that. But if my sensory perception had no control over them, I'd live forever. But unfortunately, we have control over them. But now, this part of us that lives forever, we are like two separate entities. This is a part of humanity. I mean, the modern human, as we are today, is a split human. Modern humans have two souls. Why? Because our left brain personality has been completely shut off from our right brain. So the two souls, the universal immortal soul of the right is there, and the mortal one of the left is there, but they are not really communicating as they should be. In animals, or in earlier times, they were communicating because there was no division between them. Perception could move freely through that. So animals, they still have their perception somewhat, the focus of perception, somewhat in the right brain. So they follow the laws of nature. And if they follow the laws of nature, they're in a way sacred because they follow the laws of nature. We have freedom of choice, so we can do right or wrong. Animals, birds, trees, everything in nature follows the laws of nature. They cannot do wrong, so they're in a way sacred. And this sacredness of nature means that an animal is in the hierarchy of being is higher than the human. Looking at it from this point of view, not from the point of view of freedom of choice, of intellect, because in the universal realm, there are things that are more important than intellect. So the animals that are completely aware by the laws of nature and live by them, they are on a higher level than we are. So in ancient Egypt, for example, they used to place the animal kingdom as the intermediary between the human and the divine. So animals were the intermediary. So when you see hybrid figures of humans with animal heads, that is giving a higher status to humans by placing an animal head over them. That means it's by making the human sacred, by making the human part of the natural order. So you see, so that is there. The human can become that if the door is open to the right brain side, if you can communicate through the intellect of the heart. But it has stopped somewhere. The door has been closed, and we are completely trapped in left brain consciousness. Left brain consciousness is very good, very analytical. It has built a whole civilization, the way we see it and all that. But we have built the civilization on 2% of the information that our sensory organs give us. The 98% is the holistic information that is behind the doors that separate us from the subconscious, from the heart. So the heart knows, the heart communicates with the 98% of creation. To the heart, there is no linear time and space. The heart sees a multidimensional time and space. So in your subconscious, in the intellect of the heart, you can move from in time and space. You're not confined by linear time and space, so you can move in multidimensional time and space. You can become an individual or a collective or even a universal being. You can become this, or that. And in time, you can be in the future, you can be in the past, you can be in the present. It's all one thing that you move through. So it's a fantastic multi-dimensional presence in which our mortal or immortal soul actually lives in. So, and fortunately, when we die, we shed the mortal soul and live in the immortal one, not vice versa. So that's a good thing. At least we know that we're immortal at some time. Now, once we looked at this sacredness of living with the laws of nature like the animals do and all that, then we can understand the sacredness of animals in ancient Egypt. So we can understand, for example, in ancient Egypt, if you kill a cat, it's punishable by death because you killed a sacred being. It's punishable by death. They used to mummify their cats, their dogs, all kinds of animals in ancient Egypt were mummified. If you go to Saqqara, in Saqqara near the pyramid, you have the Serapeum, and then you go underground and you have those huge sarcophagi built of granite that are 2 meters by 2 meters by 4 meters, and they weigh maybe 80 tons or something like that. These, as far as we can tell today, because we're not really sure because we found them empty, but they were made for the sacred bulls. So they used to mummify the sacred bulls and put them there. So you needed a huge sarcophagus to take such a big animal. So these were made for the sacred bulls. If you go to the Serapeum, you'll see that building, the tunnels of that Serapeum, the underground tunnels, that they go very long distances underground. And how did they bring those huge megalithic sarcophagi, 80 tons or 60 tons, things like that? How did they move it through those tunnels and place them down there? It shows they made a huge effort just for the sacredness of their animals. So this sacredness of the animal kingdom, I'm stressing on that because I'm going to go back and try to understand the mind of the ancient Egyptian. In order to do that, I will take Jung's categorization of humanity through perception, because we usually categorize humanity as Homo sapiens, or we go back with different categories back to 3 million years. And we have Cro-Magnons, we have all kinds of humans, but we categorize them by the way they interact with nature, their body shape and things like that. But they're mostly very similar in body shape and all that. So it doesn't really tell you that if you find a body from, let's say, 1 million years, Okay, there'll be some differences and all that, but it really won't tell you what is inside the head of that. How did this person see the world? And if he saw the world differently, then he walked in a different world than we do now. We find his body here. But when he was alive, he was not here. He was in another material world superimposed on this one. So we can't really categorize humanity by whatever shapes of the body and all that. So Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychologist, he came up with a categorization built on the shift of the focus of perception between the right brain and the left brain. So he categorized humanity as primitive humanity. Primitive humanity were just like animals. The focus was totally in the right brain with very little left brain activity, so very little individuality, very little analytical skills and all that, but they were open inside to the whole multidimensional world. So they were like animals, behaving by the laws of nature. They didn't have strong individual identities, but they had more a group mind. They were working as a group mind. So these were the first humans who they lived in a multidimensional world. They lived as part of nature, but they really didn't see themselves as living in this multidimensionality of nature because their identity was still very, very weak. So they just lived as part of the natural laws, interacting with them without really being aware that they were different from them, you see. So they were part of them. Then, as the left brain developed a bit through some activities and all that, Jung comes to the second category where he speaks about ancient man. He says, ancient man now has developed skills. He has developed an identity, a personality, but he is still focused in the right brain side. So it's a man who has the sensory abilities of modern humans, but the door is open to the other side. So he's actually a hybrid, multidimensional man. So ancient humanity was like that. And that is the time of the great civilization. That's when the ancient Egyptians built their civilization. We shouldn't think of the ancient Egyptians like the way we think of modern man. No, they were ancient men. They had this complete interaction with the invisible forces of nature. Then, all of a sudden, came what we call the Great Shift. The Great Shift is when the focus of consciousness moved from the right brain totally into the left brain and the door closed. This is like a cataclysm, a huge cataclysm.
Yeah. Like a new cycle began for humanity.
The world all of a sudden falls apart and there's a new world out there. So modern man is living in, I call this the Great Shift. Modern man is a result of the Great Shift. Very advanced left brain capabilities, but the door is closed to the right brain. And when we close the door, people were afraid to look at what's behind the door. So humanity, when a door is closed and you think it's dark behind the door, you're afraid to go there. And it took a very long time for humanity to try and have a peek behind the door. Like Freud tried to have a small peek. He came out with death wish and sexual things and all that. Yeah, he was afraid. And then Jung went a bit further in there. But we are still trapped in our left brain. So now let us go back to the origin of ancient Egypt. Now, we are going to take what we said right now. These are our modern scientific views of perception, of cognition, and all that. And we're going to take that, and together, me and you, we're going to reverse engineer the beginning of civilizations. We're going to go back and see what happens if we reverse engineer that. First of all, why should I reverse engineer? If I reverse engineer anything to go back in history, I should actually have some facts in my hand, because I'm a scientist. I like to be very factual things. I don't want to start inventing theories. No, I want to go step by step into facts. In truth, when we do that, you'll find that facts become stranger than fiction. Yes.
Wow.
So now let's take a few facts. When Herodotus, the Greek historian, 400 BC, he went to the area of what we call Heliopolis now in Egypt. He met the priests there. They told him, our civilization began when the sun had set, or when the sun had risen from the west twice. Twice, that means the great year of 26,000 years. If you take that twice, they were pointing at over 50,000 years. So they told him the civilization, Egyptian civilization, started then. Okay, that's one thing. But do we have any proof, any material things besides what Herodotus was told? Because we don't go on somebody, he could have invented it. No, we go to, there is a stone, for example, in Palermo, in the Museum of Palermo in Italy. There is papyrus in the Turin Museum in Italy. And there are the king's lists of the priest Manetone. And they all go back about 50,000 years. They're saying things happened 50,000 years ago. Now, when we take the list of dynasties by Manetone that go back, they go back first. We use them for official Egyptology until the first dynasty. Okay. And then they draw a line and say what is before that is mythology. But the list contains 12,000 years of dynasties with every king, his wife, his sons, his achievements, and all that. Every king for 12,000 years. And they were called the Shamsuhor dynasties. Now, then it goes beyond that. The list goes beyond that. Another 23,000 years to the age of the Neteru. The age of Neteru, they still give you so many dynasties, what they did, the name of every king, what he did, his wife, his children, all that, his achievements, the areas he conquered. So why would somebody sit and keep writing lists that go back 50,000 years? I mean, for nothing. I mean, giving all those details, minute details, must point to something real. I mean, so let us look at what were the ancient Egyptians in the time of the Neteru.
Yeah. And sometimes in the Sumerian kings list, one king would rule for 20,000 years or something absurd like this.
Because why? Because here's a thing. They tell you that the age, the 50,000 years ago, the age when Egypt, I mean, the beginning of our civilization, they call that Sep Tepi. Sep Tepi means before time. So now we come to a very complex situation. What do we mean? That the Egyptian civilization is older than time itself.
Different perception.
Yes, well, let's look into that. When do you have time as we see it, the linear time? Linear time is there when your focus of perception is in the left brain. Then you live in linear time. But before the focus perception, if the focus of perception was completely in the right brain, you would have no linearity. You would have multidimensional time, universal time. So this would be a state before time, before the shift into linear time. So that means that if we go back, as Jung says it, and take the focus of perception back through the years until we bring it back into the right brain perception, we will have a state that is timeless, multidimensional time. And people, when you're into multidimensional time, you see, as a human here, you see all the multidimensionality that we call the other worlds or other dimensions and all that. You actually live and move in them freely. Today, we can't imagine that we can just, I open the door of my house, I walk a bit in the future and then in the past and then back forward in time. Well, I can't imagine, but in your left brain perception, like in out-of-body experiences, like in dreams, this is a natural thing that happens. So now, if humanity at that time had a sort of perception into the right brain, into the unconscious, into the subconscious, that means it could personify beings in other dimension and personify them and materialize them into our dimension. Because, like we said, our perception creates the material world. So if I can perceive other dimensions, I can materialize them. So the material world becomes much, much broader than what we have today. And if you want an example of that today, your dog or cat has, he might not see all the colors you see, but his perception is shifted in the other side. He lives more into the subconscious side. So he would actually see dimensions that we don't see, that are material to the dogs and cats. So some beings might be material to them, patting them and all that, and we don't even see them.
Yeah.
So it would be another world superimposed on ours in which they live. On the other side, a virus would have its own world in a totally different level. So the Egyptian at that time, imagine he could materialize so many of the entities, he could materialize them here. So how would that work? They would be exactly like us, How are we materialized here? Our souls are in multidimensional realm. They come and we are born with the souls and then we become material. So actually, many of those multidimensional beings from all levels were born into human bodies. They became materialized. And by becoming materialized, they were of a bit different than the normal people who were living here. So you had normal humanity living here and different levels of sort of materialized humanity.
So they looked differently.
Yeah,
like physically.
They call them, in some scripture, they call them fallen angels, for example.
Like Thoth
Yeah,
and
they're
Osiris.
materialized. All those are multidimensional entities from all over creation that materialize here and live among the people because they are born here. They live among the people. And then those people, because the perception is widened, that means that their abilities to travel through time and space and all that come with them. So we have beings that can actually conquer gravity. They can go in forwards in time, forwards in space. They have technologies, they bring technologies that we cannot even dream of today. And then these were the Neteru. The Neteru, maybe in Egypt we had the Neteru. In other civilizations, they were materialized as Anunnaki or whatever. But it's the human perception that allowed their materialization here because the brain was still open to the right brain consciousness. So, well, why can't we find remnants of their tools, of their very advanced tools or things like that today? Because when you have a shift of perception and you close the door, every materialization that had a multi-dimensional origin would slowly disintegrate. It cannot cope with the different time space reality. So they would have to sort of, they just float out of our reality again. So many of their tools, many of their things and all that will disintegrate with time with them. And we would be left with all those megalithic monuments all around the world, not knowing how they were built, because the tools that built them and the people that built them are not here anymore. So this is the origin. In Egypt, we have the Neteru. Maybe in other places, you have other places in India, in Atlantis, in Sumeria. You would have other beings that have built this civilization out of a sort of out of the universal multidimensional being of or universal civilization. We ended up with the legacies. Once the door was closed to the right brain, we end up with the legacies. But why are we saying that? Because we have lists in our hands. We have actually a stone like the Palermo stone, like all what Manetone says. We have a lot of proof in our hands. The problem is it wasn't explained. Now, what me and you are doing right now, we're taking the brain perception concepts and cognition concepts and projection of reality concepts, and we, with those tools, we are going back deciphering, and all of a sudden we have a fantastic civilization that was here in Egypt. It's the source of everything here. And what you see today is a legacy. So if you're saying, did those hybrid gods really exist here? Well, if you knew that animals were intermediary to the gods, and then through your perception, you materialize beings from multidimensional realms. Part of the materialization depends on your personification. There's an act of personifying things. And you would personify those with human bodies, but to make them more sacred, you would personify them with animal heads and things like that. It's making them, let's say, on a higher level than humanity. Today, we understand that the opposite way. But then, at the time, they were on a higher level than humanity. So this is the origin of ancient Egypt, the technologies they gave us. I'll give you an idea of something that you could look at when you come to Egypt. There's a temple in Abydos, the Osirian. It's a very well-known temple called the Osirian. There's the Seti temple, and beside the Seti temple is in a way carved in a way and built with hieroglyphs and things like that, like the era of the Middle Kingdom. But beside it, there's a megalithic temple. You know, like the temple in front of the Sphinx, those huge megalithic stones with no engravings, nothing. They must have come from an earlier era. Well, this is a similar one. Similar one built there. It's called the Osirian. Now, the strange thing about the Osirian is that it is built of huge granite blocks, but the base is actually sandstone, limestone, and things like that. So it's very strange to have the granite on top and then softer stones under it. But then there's a lot of water in the middle of the temple. So every time they try to dredge it out, there's a huge pressure that comes out and fills it. You can't dredge it out. Now, they did some sensors and things, and they found that the Osirian was built on a waterbed. There is no ground under it.
Yeah, sacred power spot.
It's a sacred power spot, but the pressure of water in that specific spot was so strong that they built a whole temple on it, and the actual waterbed under it goes down 600 feet. So imagine it's on top. So when you go there to Abydos, go and visit the Osirian.
It's a big pool.
Well, you will go into a temple. It's just a temple like any other temple. But you might find in the middle of the temple, like a water, you'd think it looks like a water pool or something like that. You wouldn't know that it's open to nowhere.
600 feet.
So
were the pyramids also built on top of water?
You see, I'll take you a bit through the history of pyramids, the concept of pyramids. Now, if we go back to the dawn of humanity, primitive man was more like animals, so they imitated animals a lot. They saw the crow, for example, burying its dead in the ground, so they started doing the same thing. They saw animals going into sacred power spots. When they were sick, they drank from the water, and then they were healed. Or they saw the animals going for burial in such, they went to die in such areas. And then they noticed something around those sacred power spots, that many species were performing rituals. So humanity started learning its rituals from animals. For example, birds, they would fly in a V formation. And when they come over a sacred power spot, they start turning in circles around this.
Like a vortex.
Turn a few times, and then they continue in their V formation. And if they come over a power spot with bad energy, they would just come scatter, and then form back later on. So humanity discovered the sacred power spots and the rituals with it from the animals. They imitated the animals. But the water in those areas was a very specific type of water. We call that today, it's called rock water. This rock water is water that flows in about veins that are about 80 centimeters wide. And those veins go through the rocky strata of the earth about 150 meters down. And they actually, it's like veins going through the whole earth. So the water coming out of those veins, when the veins cross, sometimes you get a vortex there. So you get an energy vortex coming up at the crossing, and it pulls some of the water, and then you get a holy spring or a holy lake, like an oasis or things like that, coming out of the ground. So one of the most important aspects of a power spot is actually this natural spring from water of the rocks. And there are traditions all over Europe. When they built the old churches all over Europe, they used to dig or drill for the water of the rocks. And you find that all the churches in Europe have that. In the city of Zurich in Switzerland, they have 1,200 wells of healing water. You can walk in the street and you have the wells everywhere. You can drink from the fountains anywhere in the street. It's healing water. So imagine a town with 1,200 fountains of healing water. So now we have a main factor in sacred power spots is the healing water. And then you have a vortex. Now this vortex has multidimensional qualities. So when they went into the vortex, they had sort of communication with higher beings. And that's the beginning of oracles, communication with higher beings on those spots. Now, with time, you find that they went and brought maybe a 40-ton stone made of granite, because they needed a stone with a dense crystal content. Somehow they felt that stones with dense crystal contents would radiate the energy of the area to a larger area. They made it more powerful. So imagine a caveman going sometimes 200 miles to an area where there's a rock mountain and getting a granite boulder from the mountain, putting it on wooden sledges, putting it on water, making a raft, and then again on sledges and coming to their spot again. Might take 10 years. And then there they would erect it on the spot. And that is the first architectural work that we know, and we call that today, we call that the menhir. So menhirs are there marking the power spots and radiating their energy. Menhirs, through history, they are the origin of obelisks, of towers, all the church towers, all kinds of towers and all that. They go back to the menhirs on sacred power spots. Now, that is not all. They had something much more important. They came on those power spots and they erected 2 megalithic stones. Imagine 2 stones, each one about, let's say, 40 tons. And then they brought a 3rd stone, put it on top of those 2 to form a gate on the spot. Now, they oriented that gate to the equinoxes. So imagine, so many years ago, thousands of years ago, 50,000, 100,000 years ago, that they would build this gate oriented to the equinoxes. And when I made models of like a gate-like model, and I kept turning it and seeing what happens when I keep turning it like that. Now I put it on a sacred power spot and kept turning it. at a certain angle in the range of the equinoxes, east-west, all of a sudden you had this very strong sacred energy emitting out of it. So the gate connected the sacred power spots to the cycle of life through the equinoxes. So imagine that they had a gate that connected the power spot to the cycle of life. Then we find that later on, they came and covered the dolmen. That's what they call it, the dolmen. They covered it with mud. So they had like a mud hill, and the dolmen became like an inner chamber. And this is the origin of all sacred buildings of all types until today, is the prehistoric dolmen. Now, later on in history, some people found sacred mountains in Europe and built their castles on them or built a church, not knowing that it's an artificial mound with a dolmen inside. Today we discovered those. Now, they covered that in the beginning with a mound. Later on, we find they covered it with mud bricks. And then slowly, we come into the pyramid era and we have pyramids. So the pyramids are the last architectural, let's say, expression of interacting with the chambers, with the dolmen chambers. But the core of any pyramid is the dolmen chamber, and under every pyramid you will find a water source somewhere. You could find it, or it could be hidden, or it could be very deep. And you have the chambers, and the pyramid is there as the final expression. You could, of course, once you have architectural means of the pyramid, you can start of refining your interaction, because what you are doing now, the dolmen and menhir, you're interacting with life force. And the life force is the fuel of the universe. What is making the stars go around each other, around the sun, moving the galaxy? There must be a force doing all that. That is life force. What's making you grow is life force. What's making us move is life force. So our energies are nothing besides life force. Now, the ancients, they knew that the civilizations that came at the time of the Neteru and all that had their main fuel, their main energy was life force. So some people try to say, well, the pyramids were built to generate electricity. They were built to generate that. Forget about all that. I mean, these would be the lower types of energies. I mean, these energies have no life in them. But life force is an intelligent, living force that you could harness. And you harness that through the sacred power spots, through the dolmen, which becomes your inner chamber, and later becomes the Holy of Holies in temples. So it's all. Now, when you understand that, you understand the sacredness of all those sites. Because people go today, you go into a site as tourists, the guide tells you, see this and see that and all that, and you're eating your sandwich and laughing, and you're not aware that you're in a sacred site. For example, if you go to a church today, there's a certain reverence when you go to a church. It's sacred. Because the owners of that belief are still here on earth. But the owners of the other buildings are long gone. So you're just going to watch and enjoy the scenery. No, you are going. Every one of those temples, every one of those places is a very, very potent sacred power spot connecting to the multidimensionality of being. And that's the reason of being. So you should go in with a prayer, with respect, you see. And if you're going to visit, to get the best out of a site, you should first, when you go, wash, clean yourself well, make your meditation, prepare yourself. I mean, when you do some spiritual exercises, you go through some preparation. Well, do the same thing when you go visit those sites. Go through a preparation. I want to tell you something important about the building of those sites. In ancient times, since the beginning of humanity, who built those? What kind of workers would you get to build your monument? Any kind of monument. People today think, they could have used their slaves or used their servants or used or ordered people to do it. That is totally false, because there are rules for sacred buildings. And those rules are, first of all, you have to be free. No master. And that is the origin of the word Freemason. You're a free Mason. So you're allowed to work in the building of a church. But if you had your own master, he made you work, it should be a freedom of choice. So you had to be free. And then you had to undergo a certain initiation before even touching the stones. You're not allowed to touch the stones or work on stones unless you were completely clean, undergone a few, let's say days, at least 40 days or something of initiation. And in the building of the cathedral in Barcelona, Antonio Gaudi, he followed those ancient traditions before he set foot in the building to start it. He went into fasting and initiation rituals for 28 days before he would even take a pen and start even drawing it. So building ancient buildings, they had to be built by very, very special guilds of people that they knew all those spiritual secrets of interacting with the sacred power spots. Because if the builder didn't have the rituals of interacting with the sacred power spot, whether when he's cutting stone or working wood or doing this, you would actually disrespect and weaken the energy of the power spot. But the building is supposed to increase it. So the human working in it should have a certain, let's say, level of spiritual preparation before he is even allowed to touch a stone. See, so in ancient Egypt, the people who did that, the people would volunteer, and they would come and work. Mostly it was during the Nile flood, because during the Nile flood, for a long time, their fields were covered with water and all that. So they would go and do the rituals and everything and work in the temples. So the temples had to be sort of in themselves. The building is a ritual. So even when ancient cities, when they were built, the pharaoh was building a talisman, a ritual. So the city was a work of excellence, and this work of excellence was for his own initiation. Now I want to touch a certain point. All beliefs and religions whatever they are. You see, you could have different beliefs, you could have different rituals, you could have so many different things. All those things, whether you meditate, whether you do this, you do that, whether you pray, you do what? These are means and not goal. You see, they are means for a goal. What is the goal? The goal is excellence of action. And why is that? Because what do I mean by excellence of action? Excellence of action means let all the multidimensional values of your subconscious guide you in your action. So, who would be the master of your action? You own only through your sense of perception, you own only 2%. 98% is the universe. So, let divinity, let the universe be the master of your action. So, excellence is the goal. When you put all the invisible, the 100% in your work, then, and you achieve a level of excellence, the level of excellence reflects itself not only in your physical reality, but in the other 98% of multidimensionality of creation. And that is the goal. But everything else is means. You can believe what you want. You can do whatever rituals you want. Every religion has a different ritual. Okay, many people around the earth have different beliefs. Okay, it doesn't matter. But excellence of action, there's only one way. They all end up excellence of action, because spirituality is not belief. Spirituality is doing. So I'll go back to Pythagoras. Pythagoras, he came back, or he came to Egypt. The first time was around in 700 BC, something like this. He came to Egypt and went to the Pharaoh. He had a letter from the king of Samos and went to the Pharaoh and told him, the king sent me, the Pharaoh gave him a letter so that he can go and study in the Egyptian temples. Pythagoras stayed 22 years in Egypt studying. So he took the letter from the Pharaoh and he would go to every temple and show them the letter and want to join the temple. And they would tell him, "We're sorry, we have nothing to teach you." He would go to the next temple. "I'm coming to learn." Okay. "We're sorry, we have nothing to teach you." So he thought maybe the Egyptian priest didn't want to teach a Greek because he was a foreigner. Maybe that's the reason. So in despair, at the end, he went to one of the priests and told him, "Why are you Egyptians rejecting me? Is it because I'm a foreigner?" So he told him, "No, it's because you do not really understand what we are." So he told him, "Well, what are you? What you do in these temples?" He said, "We don't teach anything. We don't have anything to teach. We are temples of experience. So the only thing you can, initiation here is through experience." So again, we reach what we call excellence again. The temple will take you to excellence. And that is the teaching. And that is why I went in my life through all kinds of esoteric schools that you can think so, and societies and everything. We have a lot of them in Egypt of all different things, ancient Egyptian, Coptic, Muslim, all of them. We have them here in Egypt. But then, to develop the science of biogeometry, I thought all those teaching mean nothing. I have to do like what the priest told Pythagoras. I have to develop out of all those esoteric sciences, I have to develop a practical science that I can use and provide solutions with. And that was the birth of biogeometry. So, first of all, to develop a practical science, what would be, let's say, my energy source? What would be my fuel? That I want a subtle energy quality to work with. Now, the first question, should I look for a fuel in the subtle realm or in the physical realm? The physical realm is only 2%. The subtle realm is 98%. So looking for the fuel should be in the 98%. So I started looking for life force. How can I connect to life force? So all the sciences that I studied were related. Let's imagine you have a circle, you have all the qualities, and you would teach you all the qualities and all that. So I said, no, I'm going to go to the sacred power spots and go through the vortex. And in the energy of the vortex, this would be the fuel that the ancients must have used, because it's the ultimate balance and ultimate harmony, because it's a centering energy, but a centering that comes from the archetypal dimension. And so I went and studied the center. To me, if you had a circle and then you have a center, if I take the center and enlarge it a bit, I find that it has a center, and so on. You cannot find a center has no presence here, because the center is actually, when you look at it, it's a vortex, multidimensional vortex. And that, I thought, well, the only way to access it is by finding its quality. I cannot access it as a quantitative, as coordinates or things like that, but maybe I can access it as a qualitative thing. And so I kept researching until I developed the concept of, I developed tools in order to measure that energy. And then I found ways of, later I developed a whole design language to actually enter into resonance with that energy. And I found that this energy would actually give me the solution to everything, because if you center everything through the higher dimension. So actually today, when you tell me what's the greatest thing you have achieved, it's not my doctor's degrees, my things and all those things that I have. No, the greatest thing I've achieved is becoming the doorman to the vortex.
Yeah.
Becoming the doorman to the vortex is the greatest honor you could have now, because you could infuse the energy of the vortex into all actions, into everything. And that is biogeometry. So when I developed that, I found I had a practical science, but actually something was providing the solution. Something was doing the miracles for me. I wasn't doing anything. I was doing just some geometrical design laws and all that as an architect, as a designer, to interact with it, because I found that at sacred power spots, you had crossings of underground rivers or underground sources. And then certain angles would give you sacred water, sacred power spots. But underground streams could also create cancerous spots, what we call cancerous spots. So I thought here the geometrical aspects and polarization, all that, are very important in finding the right thing. And today, many people go to many power spots in many areas of the world, and they say this is a very strong power spot. And then you measure it, and it's really a very unhealthy power spot. It's not sacred at all. So it would really harm you if you don't know how to measure it with biogeometry. we know how to measure that. And with the design language of biogeometry, we actually create power spots with our designs. So when I teach you to design a chair or a house or anything, I'm creating a power spot with the design. So the object creates its own power spot and connects into a vortex. It creates its own vortex. And that became the science of biogeometry, a science that is different from many things. It is different from all existing sciences because it's a science that, let's say, it has no limits. It deals with 98% of reality. And remember, we said your body is run by 98% of reality, not by the 2% you see. So now with biogeometry, I'm interacting with the total multidimensional reality and bringing it through the vortex into our sensory reality. So that is biogeometry. So we say always, but if we really have the excellence of action, then I should provide solutions with biogeometry. So, for example, I can give you a few examples. We have thousands of projects, but in Switzerland, for example, there was an area called Hamburg where people became electrosensitive from all the electricity that was running over their heads and all that. And then they wanted to sort of dynamite all the towers. And the Swiss government came to me and said, please help us, because I have my doctor's degree and all that from Switzerland. So they came to me and said, please help us. I mean, we're having a huge problem with those areas. And if we take away the towers from those areas, the next town will say, do the same. We cannot dismantle technology from Switzerland. So they told me, please find a solution for those people. So I like to joke with them. I tell them, okay, now, if you want to cancel all the problems, then take away all the sources. So they said, we can't do that. We want to keep all the sources of electromagnetic radiation, but we want all the problems to be reduced. So I said, you want me to change the outcome? Well, you keep the source. That's very illogical. So they said, look, don't play around with us. We know you can do it. So come and do it. So I went up there and we placed some biogeometry things. Now, when the doctors of the parliament came and did their survey, 60% of all symptoms were reduced. 60% of complaints were reduced. That's huge. And then migrating birds came back. Things like epilepsy or things like that completely vanished from the whole region. And a change occurred in the psychology of the people. Somehow, by relieving the internal stress, their psychology changed. So aggressiveness between the people disappeared and they became very friendly. So they called it the miracle of Hamburg. They didn't understand what kind of energy I was using. But what I did was, with geometrical shapes, I infused all the mobile communication emissions with life force, with the force of the center, what we call in biogeometry BG3. So I put the BG3 quality into the emissions. Why in the emissions? I could have just put it in the houses, but I can't put a shape in every house. So I'd need thousands of shapes. So I thought I use a carrier thing. What carrier network do I have? So I have the mobile communication. It covers everything. So if I put shapes on the antennas, it will take the life force everywhere. So I did that, and the miracle of Hamburg happened. In another area in Hirschberg, I did it in a different way. I use the Earth energy fields, I use them to carry the effect of the shapes. So I buried the shapes in the ground, and the effect went to the whole area. You would find migrating birds coming back, the animals, like the cows, were fertile again, and things like that. And they called them the miracles. So in Canada, for example, we did chicken farming without any antibiotics, without anything at all. No chemicals, no antibiotics, nothing, and they grew healthy. So using biogeometry now, I'm actually connecting to the energy quality of the sacred power spots. You know, in ancient times, when they planned a city, for example, they used to find the sacred power spots. They used to put the important buildings, like the temple, the hospital, the ruler's palace, the market, on those power spots, and then connect the power spots with avenues so that the sacred energy would flow between the power spots.
Like the ley lines.
These are the ley lines that when they didn't find them already existing, they would use some geometrical means to connect them. And so you had power spots, ley lines as your main avenues, and then you took the Earth energy survey grids as a second layer, and then you built your town on them. So what happens? Your town grew out of the energy of the Earth. So all ancient towns grew out of it. Now, unfortunately today, we lost the concept of a power spot. Now, if you start discovering the power spots in your area, go visit them from time to time, make the power spots your, let's say, your not I say daily, but weekly, you'd go in this power spot. The power spot could be a church, but it should be an old church. The modern ones are built anywhere. But if you find an old church, sometimes or power spots in nature, if you learn biogeometry, like we give courses all over the world, you can actually find a power spot everywhere. You can even find it in your home, in your garden, and all that. And then if you find one mini power spots in your home, take your chair and put it on it, put the bed on it. Make the power spots, bring it into your culture, bring it into your life. Because if you ask me, what is the most important factor in the development of human history, I would tell you this factor would be the power spots. The power spots and sacred lakes and sacred fountains have shaped the development and history of humanity throughout history, although today it's forgotten, but it was the main factor in shaping human history.
Where are the most regular power spots that you visit in your life?
Well, look, first of all, every pyramid, every temple, every church you find here in Egypt, every old church, not new ones, every old mosque, if you go to them and you go to the center, in the temple, you go to the Holy of Holies, in the pyramid, you go to the chambers, you're always looking for the dolmen. Then you have a power spot. And then in most of those places, some of the places you still have the sacred lake there. For example, in Karnak, you have the big sacred lake. Or the oases. The oases are natural sacred lakes, you see. So get the habit of interacting with power spots all the time.
I know when you took your daughter, Doreya, to the King's Chamber for the first time, or I don't know if it was the first time, But she said that you did something very special to amplify the energy of the pyramid, where you visualize the door of the king's chamber closed. Because I've been in there and it's wide open. You just walk in,
Yes.
and I know that there used to be maybe a door to really close that chamber.
Yes.
What is the importance
Yeah.
of closing that door, even just with your mind, to
Yeah, because
amplify the energy of the pyramid?
your mind creates, actually, I can visualize the stone door. And then I closed the 3 doors, the stone doors to the chamber. And when I did that, all of a sudden, the energy in the chamber changed completely. It became very, very powerful. And then another time we played, we have a song or a musical piece that is called the Serious Odyssey. And the Serious Odyssey, we played it in the King's Chamber. I'll let Doreya send you a file of the Serious Odyssey to use like that in your next program. Now, the Serious Odyssey has, when you start with the rhythm of the Serious Odyssey, I made a certain calculation to enter into resonance with the planet Sirius. So it puts you, as it starts, moves, then it slowly takes you into resonance with Sirius. And then the rest of the composition deals with certain aspects of your body, of your mental, of your spiritual, of things like that. I deal with everything, with your heart, with your thing. And it's about a 12-minute piece that if you play it, it actually harmonizes everything, even electromagnetic radiation in your room from your computer, from your router, and all that. It will harmonize everything. So you can play that, and even if you play it at very low sound, you don't hear it, it will still have the effect. If you put it on a CD and then put the CD playing face up and put it on the table, you don't need to play it because it will have effects in the room straight away.
So I'm really curious, like this has been one of the most fascinating chats that we've had. And, you know, when you were talking in the beginning about the multidimensional beings that in a sense gave rise to modern civilization or to ancient civilizations in the past, when we close that door, those multidimensional beings are still, as you said, like superimposed in multidimensional reality. So do those civilizations that they built with the hybrid tools still exist today, but in other dimensions?
Yes, they do. And now they do. And the animals and birds are still in contact with them. Because animals and birds, they haven't closed the door. We have closed the door. They haven't. Now let's come to another point. Let us say we have means of opening the door to the subconscious so that we can actually return to the age of the Neteru. Now, would we do it? Now, I wouldn't do it today because remember, we are speaking about the 98%, which is your subconscious. You're interacting with them through your subconscious. And now, humanity, our subconscious, is so full of aggression and wars and all like that. Because what happens when you channel an entity? You know, people, for example, they tell you there are entities around us, all kinds of entities, invisible entities. They're harmful, or Lucifer or Satan or Ahriman, all those are harmful to us, or things like that. They are not harmful because they don't have freedom of choice like we do. They are actually all sacred because they follow the laws of nature. But what happens when we personify them into interacting with us? There is an energy exchange. So we put our subconscious qualities into them. And So they become aggressive to us or harm us because we have projected ourselves into them and sort of modified them to do that. So there's a secret of what you should do in any situation. Not everybody is in a situation of communication with all kinds of entities or beings, but in general, if you just bless them, all of a sudden, they will help you in everything you're doing. Just a blessing. In biogeometry, we have a shape like an L90, like this, we call it L90. So all you have to do to avoid your subconscious contents interacting with them, you imagine projecting the L90 into the elemental kingdom or into the elements or in whatever it is. All of a sudden, they become your helpers. Even the worst of them. Because no elemental is malicious. They follow the laws of nature. It's like saying a tree, this tree doesn't like me. The tree follows the laws of nature. But if you are there and interact with the subconscious to the tree, okay, the tree might reflect your subconscious. So in general, everything in nature is sacred. And if you have tainted it with some of your negative traits, all you have to do is throw an L into it. So you're throwing the light into it. And when you throw the light into them, all of a sudden, they help you without you even knowing it, because you have become their friend. All those elemental regions will start being protective invisibly in your environment. You'll find your luck changing. You'll find your life changing. Everything is changing because all elemental beings now in the universe you have blessed them. So you will live in that blessing because they're sacred.
Yeah. And I know your life's work has been to, as you said, be that doorman. And I think a lot of that process has been you shifting again from your left brain to your right brain again and finding a harmonic balance between those two. Have you had any of these direct experiences opening up to your right brain and seeing the world through a multidimensional lens and seeing them as the multidimensional beings, or as we mentioned, looking beyond space and time? What have your Ibrahim Karim's direct experiences been like?
My role is to teach humanity in very simple ways, show them how to use the divine light in all their products and actions and all that. And that sums up all the esoteric experience I've gathered in my life. I have summed it up in a very simple, straightforward science that carries all the power of multidimensionality in it. Now, the question of my personal experiences, I never speak about this, where I am multidimensional or my personal experience. That because it will...
They're sacred. They're sacred experiences.
No, it's not that. It will take away the focus from the science I'm giving people to help them. It will shift the focus to me.
Yeah, completely understand that.
I don't want to be the center of focus.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I like to be the doorman. If I tell you, yes, if you ask me, have you done that? Yeah, I can do this. I did that. I did that. I did that. That I wouldn't. I'd never speak about those things. So I thought one day, some people told me, can you write a book about where you come from, all that, and that will, so that it's published after your death. And I said, even that, I wouldn't do it. Let my legacy be biogeometry.
I love that. And I feel like even right now, a lot of people are discovering how to open that door for themselves, whether that's through your teachings or they're coming through it in an intuitive way. What can someone expect then when they begin to open the door again? Because maybe there are people out there that are listening to this that have been opening the door and are experiencing things that they do not know how to explain. In that sense, when humanity is ready to open that door again, what do you feel that humanity would look like in the future of the civilization?
I'll tell you something very simple. When I said I developed biogeometry, in the beginning, when I started teaching the first teachings, I had many, many friends here in Egypt in esoteric societies and all that. And we did lots of things together. And they came and told me, you are not allowed to teach all this knowledge to people. You can't. My answer was, am I teaching anything that exists in your teaching? No. Okay, I know all your teaching, but I'm not teaching it. I am teaching biogeometry. It's a very simple thing. But they told me, but you're teaching all the esoteric knowledge in a practical way. So I said, that's exactly, biogeometry is a practical way. So now, instead of thinking, I open up multidimensionally. I tell you, from the first moment we work together, every exercise, every activity you do in biogeometry, you are creating, the cornerstone of biogeometry is creating the energy quality of what we call BG3 of the vortex. So if you get the ability to create your own vortex, what else do you want? What could be greater? You don't have to think, because, all the people who get messages from the other side, whatever, I'm not against anybody, but in general, the message has to be translated from multidimensional time into linear time. Otherwise, you won't be able to perceive it. Okay, to be translated into linear time, that means you have to stamp it, every unit of information, stamp it with time and space criteria to fit it in linear time. And then once you stamp it with that criteria, your brain or your perception will not be able to perceive it unless you personify it. Because when you personify it, you separate it from the environment. No personification, no perception. Okay, how do you personify it? You go to your database, sensory database, and use association there and get all the criteria that relate to it. And then you create the personification, and then you will perceive it and understand it. So a lot of what you are seeing is a personification based on the cultural content that you have. Nobody can tell you, I know the truth, or I know the multidimensional. Nobody. That is why I always say, if you have translated things honestly. Now, if you come to me with a translation, or your point of view, somebody else comes with another translation that's completely the opposite of yours. If both of you have been honest in their translation, then both of you are right. I accept both automatically. But I do not accept both as the truth. I accept them as understanding of the truth. And there's a big difference here. Usually, the multidimensional mind treats us as children. I'll give you an example, a very simple example from quantum physics. In quantum physics, you say, my intention will actually make energy be perceived as a particle or as a wave. But if your intention is a wave, you can't find the particle. If your intention is a particle, you can't find the wave. So they tell you human intention plays a part in the behavior of energy. That's what quantum science does. Now, I go much beyond that. I tell you, if you get to see what you want, then I could materialize things. I could dematerialize things, but it's not possible. So why? Because in reality, my mind is actually just a self-reflective projection of the universal mind. See? Now, if I come with a theory of mine, and the theory is an honest theory. Now, the universal mind, if I go asking the universal mind through my theory that way, the universal mind is going to comply to me. Not because I know the truth, the multidimensional truth, no, because the universal mind is benevolent and will grant me my wish. So here, when I want to see the energy as a particle, the universal mind complies and shapes the energy as a particle. It's not me. The energy does not follow my wish. No, it's the universal mind that gives me my wish. We have to stop being arrogant. We have to know our place. You ask and you shall be given. You order and you get on your head. You can't get anything if you order. But if you ask for it nicely, you get it. That's what you teach your children. So that's what the universal mind teaches us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think to really put everything into a circle again, back to the circle of life that we've been talking about, we started off the conversation talking about how humanity started in this state of consciousness where it was like one mind, they were operating together. Then it went into right brain perception. Then it fell again to left brain. Are we back in a cycle now as a collective where we're shifting away from the left, like another great shift, but to the other side, back to the right? Or are we finding the center point right now?
No, we have a problem now, because now we are entering the world of artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence will push you far into the left brain. Now, what will happen? I'm not of the opinion of many people that artificial intelligence is going to rule over humanity. Because in biogeometry, when I'm speaking about subtle energy, there's a very important law of bidirectional resonance. So, bidirectional information exchange. So now our children who are growing up using artificial intelligence, their mind on a subtle energy level, the 98%, will enter into resonance with AI. And there'll be information exchange, and then they will develop to become artificial intelligence human beings. So they will become living artificial intelligence. So they'll become super human being but super lefties, not right. They'll become super left human beings. Fantastic abilities of analysis, fantastic things like that, but completely away from the multidimensionality of creation, completely away of the emotional aspects of human values. They will lose all that, you see, and they'll become like very, very advanced superhuman machines, but they're alive. And they will think of themselves very advanced in compared to us. They will think we were a very primitive society and they're very advanced society. But they will have no notion of, let's say, of no feelings for anything. Productivity, efficiency will be their main goal, you see. And instead of feeling good or bad, they'll think of efficient or not efficient. We would have to create, to humanize artificial intelligence. Now, I suggest we connect the artificial intelligence. I would connect it to a living thing, but I cannot connect it through sensors or things like that. I cannot connect it to the human being, because the human being could be malicious. You see, could make it even worse. No, I'd go and use the plant kingdom, for example. I'd connect the computer or the artificial intelligence system to a plant. You know that when they connect a plant to a lie detector, and if you think, I'm going to cut a leaf, the plant will react straight away. Any bad thought, the plant will automatically react even before you do it. If you catch scissors in your hand, going to cut part of the leaf, the plant will react. You'll see that in the lie detector. It will react because it will read your energy. Now, so what I would do, I would connect an artificial intelligence system. I'd connect it to a plant system. So any action that is immoral or unjust, the plant will react. So, because the plant now has the laws of nature, so I connected AI to the laws of nature. Now, if something is against the laws of nature, the plant reacts, and I put something in the AI. Whenever the plant reacts, this bit of information is cancelled. So I would create, that's my dream, of really transforming AI to become part of nature.
What if the plant perceives a human against the laws of nature and they're connected to AI?
You know, a plant in itself will react to a human based on the quality of your intention. So if you have an intention against a plant, for example, or against an animal, or against an insect, the insect could be on its own, have nothing to do with you. But if you have a certain aggressive feeling towards it, then it could secrete things, harm you, or things like that. So, but in its own domain, it's never harmful. So the plant itself will only regulate things. And you will know that whenever the plant reacts to an information, that this information should be cancelled. Because the plant here has no personality. The plant is actually representing the laws of nature. So your AI, if you put this sort of link, if you can link it to an energy of a plant, that means you brought AI and nature into harmony. And then our children, when they use AI and they develop in the future, they will develop with a sort of a harmony with nature instead of a complete separation from nature.
In one of your lectures, I saw that you asked the question, can we, as we advance, manipulate our brains through technology to introduce hybrid time in our consciousness and maybe materialize these other higher dimensions? Would this relate to your views on AI, or are you maybe even sensing a different technology can be introduced to create maybe?
Like I said, if I connect, the whole idea is to make a bridge between my conscious and my subconscious realm, so that all of a sudden it's like being completely awake and in control in your dreams, something like this. So I see the other worlds, I interact with them, I have full control in my interaction with them. Now, like I said, the problem is presently humanity would draw entities that are very aggressive to us because they will reflect what we have. So that's why I think that only, there's a protective mechanism in the universe. So I think that only people who have reached a full level of, let's say, inner balance will be given this ability so that we protect humanity. And how do we achieve this inner balance? So, many people, they do all kinds of rituals, of exercises, of all kinds of things. I won't tell you all of it, to achieve inner balance, okay? That is not the way. The only way to achieve inner balance is to accept all others. Now, this is a very, very difficult thing. If you can tell me, yes, but the terrorist who is killing somebody, how can I accept the terrorist? Now, there's a trick to that. All creation is sacred. The human being is a divine creation, so every human being has divine light in him. He is sacred. Even the one killing and doing mistakes, so separate the sacredness of the human being from the quality of his actions. Look always at somebody who is doing the wrong thing like a sacred person who is lost, who is doing things lost, but respect him as a divine creation. So by looking at people like that, I'm not telling you accept wrong things, no, but go against actions, correct actions, without judging the human himself. That is a very difficult thing. And not only in that, if you see, if you have a certain idea and somebody else has a different idea, you see, if somebody comes and tells you, well, what are you doing? All this meditation and all these things and all that is nonsense. So, and I'm asking you to accept him. You tell me I can't. So I said that's your problem. You have to accept, even to accept that he doesn't understand. Or he has a certain ego that is, for him, riding in a sports car or having this or that. This is his success. But sitting and meditating does not bring him money, so it's not his success. Okay, understand him that way, accept him as a human being who has certain values, certain things, it doesn't change the fact that there's an inner light somewhere in his heart. And maybe, you never know, maybe that person, just 1 second before he dies, he discovers that inner light. You never know. So the secret, this is the highest secret that for all humanity is accept all other. So if you manage to accept all other, then you are on the right track. It's a very difficult thing, but you have to learn it, how to accept all other.
Yeah. That has been one of the most beautiful flows of wisdom that I've heard in a very long time. And thank you so much for really tuning into the intellect of your heart throughout this whole conversation and allowing us to really get a glimpse of the divine light within you. And we end every show with a segment that we call the final trio, which are just little short questions that we ask at the end. But before that, where would you send people to connect with your amazing life's work, working with you and teaching, working with your teachings personally, any upcoming events that you have going on? Where would you send people to connect in that way?
Well, we have our website where the whole information is, www.biogeometry.com. And then I have 3 books out there. You can find them on Amazon. The first is Back to a Future for Mankind. The second is BioGeometry Signatures. These are the flow of energy around all the organs of the body that you can activate to reach inner harmony and balance and even healing. And then the last one is a very deep book that explains the whole physics of quality. It's called Hidden Reality. And there are a couple of books coming out in the next few months. So from there, and then we have, if you go to YouTube and search BioGeometry, I always put a lot of stuff in there, some of it in English, some of it in Arabic, very little, a bit of French, a bit of German, but not too much, things like that.
Amazing. We'll put everything in the links in the show notes. And for the final trio, the first 2 are personalized to the guest, and the last one we ask at the end of every show. So the first one I wanted to ask you is, what are the main laws of nature that humanity must align to in order to ensure a thriving future for our species?
Well, it is like living with the divine light. You know what I told you in the beginning? I have those 3 lines written in my first book. That's 14 years old now, but it's the same. You make me see everything. That's the first line. Meaning that I am part of the divine light. It's not, I don't see the divine light. It's the divine light that makes me project. These are spiritual and scientific at the same time. That shows that reality is projected from within me. So you make me see everything. Then I see you in everything. That means you see the sacredness of divine light as the centers of everything in nature. There's nothing but manifestations of those vortices, the circular vortices. So you make me see everything. I see you in everything. You see me through everything. Now, what that will do, it will make the divine light connect you to the vortex, and it will change the energy of your environment for some time. It will do that. So those 3 lines are very simple to say. It's speaking to the divine light.
Beautiful. The second question I have for you is, what is one thing that would allow anyone tuning into this episode amplify their life force energy?
Well, to amplify your life force energy, first of all, you have to live by all the values of your heart, all the natural values. Now, those values comprise knowledge. Knowledge is a very important inner value, but true knowledge of the heart. So live with all those components that I just named before as under the title of excellence. So live by putting excellence into all your actions. Excellence means knowledge, benevolence, all the attributes. Together, they produce excellence. So make excellence the goal of your life.
Beautiful. Thank you. And this last question we ask, we call it the time capsule question, and it requires us to travel out a little bit into the future, around 15 to 20 years. So if we're multidimensional, it's going to be a quite easy question.
Yes.
But I chose those time frames because I believe that will be a time when the younger generations of today will be stepping more into leadership positions around the world. And like any great leader, they are going to need great mentors, great teachings, great guidance along their path in order to become an embodied leader and a heart-centered leader. So you had the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule for these leaders that they would open in 20 years down the line, right at the precipice moment where they are ready to become great leaders. And when they open your time capsule, they will be equipped with any tools, any wisdom, any knowledge, anything that you would like to put behind and leave as a legacy for the young generations of today that will equip them to lead into the new epoch of humanity. What would you leave inside of the time capsule?
Well, I would put inside my time capsule a mega vortex. When you open the capsule, it is such a huge vortex that it would pull all humanity on earth in connection to all the levels up to the divine level. It would pull everybody in that vortex, bring the light into their hearts, and that way change the earth, make the earth, because the earth is already in the vortex. The nature is already in the vortex. So this will make us all of a sudden become part of nature. We become part of nature, and earth will embrace us, and we enter into a new multidimensional future.
Mm-hmm. And before they open the time capsule, you can leave behind, it's going to say your name, and below your name, you can encarve a question, a contemplative question that you would leave behind for these leaders that they can sit with, ponder on, contemplate in their daily life. What question would you leave behind for them?
You know, the problem with all those leaders is, in order to open the door to multidimensionality, or let's say in order to open the capsule, I ask you one thing. Take off your ego, and the capsule will open. Otherwise, you can try to do everything around it, you won't be able to open it. Take off your ego is the secret word, and the capsule will open on its own.
It's like you can't walk through the doorway as a somebody. You have to go in through as a nobody.
You have to go in as a nobody.
Beautiful.
You have to understand you are just a doorman. You might be given the honor to open the door. Okay? That's a huge honor. But if you're still not invited in, when you have lost your ego and you open the door, they will tell you, please come in.
Beautiful. Brother, I see you wholeheartedly, and thank you for being just one of many doormans that will appear throughout human history that will really allow us to shift into a new dimension and a new reality. I feel this is such an honor and an exciting time. I feel like you're just getting started, but you've already had so much life's work and teachings behind you. So thank you so much just for leaving behind such an incredible, piece of work and what you will continue to build. And I look forward to continuing this conversation and hopefully visiting you in Egypt and seeing and giving you a big hug in person. Really, really appreciate all of what you are doing in the world. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I wish I could have been there to welcome you when you come to Egypt. But next time, when you come to Egypt, then you come and visit my center, the BioGeometry Center in Egypt, and we will show you all the things that we work on. And we'd be happy to have you in my country. You see, I can't call... I'll say last thing now before I go. Don't look at Egypt as a country. Look at Egypt as a state of being. Because, let's take it historically. Pythagoras was here in the temples of Egypt. Pythagoras is the father of Western sciences, father of music, of mathematics, and all those things. When he came out of the temples of ancient Egypt, he could not give out the secret qualitative aspects of what he learned because they were more experiential, So he gave out all the quantitative aspects. And on those quantitative aspects, Western civilization was built. But on the other side of the coin lies hidden all the spiritual secrets of experience of ancient Egypt. So every person, if you're living in the world of Western science, if you look on the other side of the coin, that means not on the sensory perception, look in your heart and the extrasensory perception, you will find ancient Egypt there as a state, as an anchor. It is still living in you. So come to ancient Egypt, you come to a state of being, not just to visit a country.
And all those who walk with the right intention into that state of being will be changed forever.
Yes, the path to Egypt is the path to your heart, because Egypt exists at the center of your heart. It's a state of being. It's not a country. The country is just a geographical location.
Well, I'm excited to go there, and I'll have many, many stories to tell you and everyone listening about.
Yes, when
what a wonderful land that is.
We connect again and tell me all you've done here.
We will.